Welcome to Talking with Colerain Township. Today we have some of the Colerain Fire Department in our studio, and that is because of an event that happened this summer, and it's exciting and we want to make sure we hear about it. Before we do that, I just want to introduce you all. We have Captain Michael Kakey, we have firefighter paramedic Tyler Abatello, and we have Lieutenant Chris Presser here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start out just with that introduction with how long you've been with the department, a little bit about your role with the department. Captain Kakey, why don't you start?
Hi, I've been with Colerain for 23 years and I'm a captain.
Okay. And
my name's Tyler. I've been with Colerain Township for 7 years altogether. Firefighter, paramedic.
And Chris?
Approximately 21 years with Colerain.
Okay. All right. So you all have a history in the township, and that time working together means you were ready for something that happened this summer. So let's start with a call that you got in July. And Captain Kakey, why don't you start with that?
Well, we were dispatched mutual aid for a water rescue in Whitewater Township, which is an unusual in the summertime. With Green Acres Kayak Company, they get a lot of water rescues. Most of the time, it's somebody who's just lost and disoriented, maybe with a head injury. This one was a little bit different because it was saying somebody was stuck in a pile of debris and they were going underwater.
We were hearing radio updates on the way in. Abatello and I were in the boat car together going down, and Captain Kakey was in the district car, so he was actually our battalion that day. And we responded to the river, and on the way in, a very seasoned officer that we hear on the radio a lot, you could hear it in his voice. He was very concerned that he was watching the victim go down in the front of what that debris we call a strainer, and he was struggling, and he knew that he didn't have much time. So he was requesting how long was it going to take for us to get there and get in the water. And Captain Kakey ended up jumping out of the district car into the boat with us, and then we grabbed our equipment and took off to go to him. But we knew, based on that radio traffic update, because of the guy that was calling it, and we know what his normal voice was, that it was pretty serious.
So what happened when you got in the water?
So Captain Kakey had just showed up in the district car behind us and was able to hop in the boat with us. We were able to launch fairly quickly. The river conditions weren't bad for the time of the year it was. It's fairly normal for what we usually see. Heading down to where the victim was located from where we had put in, we actually had to carry the boat through some shallower waters, and then just before where the victim was positioned, the river split off from itself and created a separate channel, and then right where he was located, that channel came back into the main channel of the river and basically fed right into that strainer. So that's what wound up pushing him onto the face of the strainer.
Okay.
And it was actually, those two currents merging was actually fairly substantial.
Okay, that explains why he really got trapped there. Because of those currents, how did that affect your job of getting him out of there, though?
So initially, because we could see him as we were around on the corner, Captain Kakey made a plan. He was like, look, we're just going to nose into the strainer because the current where we were at didn't seem like it was that bad. We'll just nose into it with the boat, and we'll just grab him off the front of the boat. It seemed pretty simple. But when we hit those two bodies of water and they came together, it changed everything. It changed how the boat reacted and everything else. And I spun the boat around in front of the strainer because there's so much debris. I was like, if we lose the prop, we're going to lose the boat. And there was too much current there to get close enough to him without also getting the boat sucked into it. So I said, well, that isn't going to work. I was like, fellas, they had the rescue ring, they had the rope and everything else attached to it already, and they had a PFD for him and with flotation device. And I was like, you guys are just going to have to go. And they didn't even second guess that both of those guys jumped in, and I spun the boat around facing upriver and just held position, and they took off and went after him.
So normally, would you get in that quickly? I mean,
No, this was an unusual circumstances that what we consider a go rescue, where somebody gets in the water to rescue somebody, is our last case scenario. We always try to rescue somebody from a boat. And if we do exit the boat, it's usually for shallow water. Maybe somebody needs help because they have an injured leg, or they just need help across the shallow waterway. This is the first time that I've ever done it. I think it's first time anybody in our department's done it. We do train for it, but it's not something that's a last case scenario, us entering the water, especially in the current that we're in.
Now, how do you make sure, this is the very same current that has the kayaker trapped, how do you make sure that you now also don't get trapped by that current?
And that was the struggle, because we didn't want to get into the pile of debris, because if you get swept into that, a lot of times there's a lot of things that we can get snagged on and can suck us under and not get back out from. So that was a hazard, and I think having a viable victim and wanting to save his life, we made that decision to risk a lot to save him.
Now, what about at this point, how long has the victim been in the water? Were they going to be able to stay in there much longer if you came up with any other plans?
I don't think they were. When we rounded the bend, the first time we saw him, and that's what I told Lieutenant Prosper, we rounded his bend, he went underwater, and I actually said he just went underwater. And he was underwater for a couple of seconds, and then I saw his head pop back up, and he was able just to keep his head above water and his hands onto a pretty slippery log. That was the only thing that was keeping him from slipping completely underneath it. So I don't think he could have lasted much longer.
Well, and in our case, like Cap Keiki runs our water rescue program. So, I mean, when we train, it's you will, you shall, you must never swim into the face of a strainer, because it's surely not going to go well for anybody. And in that situation, that was the really only option left on the table, was to do that. And so they just had to go do it. And it was difficult. I'll let them tell their part of it. But my perspective of it when they took off after him was the rope bags attached to, when they eventually got attached to him, run around my back to my left hand. I've got my foot on the transom and I'm driving the boat with the other hand. And then what occurred, I'll come back to later with them. That doesn't leave me a lot of options, right? And I'm watching them struggle with this guy. And, I think some of the stuff too that we really hadn't sat down, the three of us, to talk about it until we were speaking with Motorola in San Antonio, and we were talking at lunch with the rep, and some things came out. And I think that's where I'm going to turn it over to you guys to just talk about your part of it, because there were things, your perspective-wise, when you launched out of the boat, that, of course, I see my perspective, but I'm not seeing theirs, and it was kind of interesting to hear that.
I just want to talk about some of just that decision and how quick that process happened for us. We touched on our training, and we have what seems like endless options if we're afforded enough time. If somebody looks like they're doing okay, whether or not they're in that predicament, if they seem like they have enough time to where we can do something, a safer option, we can run rope systems across the entire river and lower ourselves down in safely. We can do a 2-boat tether and throw an RDC downriver, which is like a big inflatable banana boat that's unsinkable. It seems like they are. We have all of these options if we're afforded enough time. The radio reports as we were traveling downriver, he went under several times, I believe. And we had crews up above him that were tossing throw bags down to him. He was actually on a shear wall side of the river. So he was down about 10 or 15 feet and then out another 20, 30 feet into the water. So there was no option to get him from the bank. There was no option to really get him from the boat. And then after he went under that last time and just, his head popping up, we realized that this was, we kind of just put our game face on, and this is our only option.
Because the river is very unique because you can't stop it. I can pull up on a house fire and say, the building's way too involved. We're just going to go defensive on it. Everybody stay outside. We're not going to get anybody hurt. It's a building. Water, once you're in the water, I can't shut the water off. And I think that's the dynamic part of water rescue that makes things so interesting is once you're in the water, there's no way I can turn it off. You're in it until somebody pulls you back out or you swim out of it yourself. So that's the scary part about water rescue is that you just can't shut it off.
Our training, we're trained to survive these situations, if worst case scenario, you can't avoid them. We have excellent training in the water, excellent training with combative victims, excellent training overcoming some of these dangerous obstacles in a river. But you don't think you're gonna run into that until we're gonna probably run into all of this. So
All in one call.
quick decision to.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, because we've worked together and we trained together so much that, Cap made a call, and when I called an audible and said that option isn't going to work, they trust me as much as I trust them, and they knew that, okay, we have to run an audible. This isn't going to work. We got to go to Plan B, and there was not a second guess. These guys just jumped in and went after him.
Yeah, typically when we swim like that, when we're in the water, we teach everybody to aim for a spot. And I knew the water was pretty turbulent when I aimed for a spot. And I said, just from being in the river training so much, I can typically hit those spots and create a fair angle. And I did not get close to where I was, where I wanted to be. And that essentially caused a lot of the problems too, because I ended up right next to the victim. Ideally, you're going to end up a couple feet away so you can approach him slowly and talk to them. And we ended up right next to him, which instantly he started grabbing onto us and fighting us. So we didn't have much time to adjust. As soon as we got to where he was, he instantly started fighting us. And he wasn't fighting us intentionally. He was just trying to save his life.
Right. So what happened next?
Well, after Captain Keiki, I was able to watch him hit those currents, and then you were on the right side,
Yes.
correct? So he wound up on the right side of the victim, and was able to make contact with him. And I aimed very wide left so that I could come up from his backside. Typically, we try and get one person to get their attention so that they can focus on them and ideally try and calm them down a little bit. And then we'll have somebody else come up from behind and actually secure them. So I aimed very wide left and I got pushed with that current a little less than wide left. And I was able to come up behind him and basically just kind of pin him to the tree branches that were in there. We had our cinch collar that has a flotation device built in. It's basically just a floating lasso kind of thing. We were able to, one arm at a time, get that around him and get that secured to him. He had a pretty good hold of both of us.
Yeah, I said it got to a point where he put me underwater several times. He put Tyler under at times, sometimes. And finally got to a point, I think he got extremely tired because he wasn't really fighting that much. And we were able to finally pin him against the log. And we were talking to him, and he said, "We're going to rescue you. You have to stop fighting us." I said, "You have to work with us to get him out." And in the meantime, Lieutenant Prosser, what the idea with that ring was that one of us would hold him. We would pull him back away from that log and get him into the main body of current and float him down. But the current was so strong, and he was not trying to swim at all anymore, so he was just sinking. So every time that Lieutenant Prosser would pull him back, he would just go underwater. So then we have to pull him back up and get him repositioned, and that's essentially how we end up working him down the log. Was Lieutenant Prosser would back him up a little bit, we'd swim, we'd kind of work him down, and we worked him out into the main channel where we could get him through.
And when I think, Captain Keiki was really dealing with a heck of a fight on his hands, because the victim actually reached through the top of his life jacket and ripped the front of his life jacket open, like reached all the way to the bottom and grabbed the bottom of it and ripped it open.
Oh.
And then Tyler kind of like tagged in, and Tyler, then the guy turned and focused on him and drug him underwater. So for me, looking back on it, like I was, choked up and really bothered by it afterwards, because, Tyler's one of my guys, and I don't say this lightly. I love him like a brother. Like, he's part of my family. And watching him and Captain Keiki get mauled and going down in the front of the strainer, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'm like, I'd actually crossed my mind, I'm going to ditch this boat and jump in and give him a hand, but then that's all gone. So I had to stay the course and continue to just do what we needed to do. And, so from my perspective, it was very disturbing and very scary watching those guys constantly go under themselves and come back up, fighting to keep themselves up and take care of him. And then when Captain Keiki yelled out, he was like, he gave me the go, go, go. And I went to, I'm like, okay, game on. And I hit the gas. And the guy's over 200 and some pounds, and he's on one rope that I'm holding one hand. And, every time I pulled him, if you ever gone fishing and you throw a bobber in and you pull it really fast, the bobber goes straight under. Even though it's a flotation device, it goes straight underwater. Well, when currents are flowing and you're pulling against that, every time we pulled him off, he went under. And he was like, go, go, go. And I'm like, I'm going to drown him and kill him. And I would let off the gas and he would come back up and they would pull him back up in front of the log. And we figured the only way to do it, like Captain Keiki was saying, pull him off, move him over, set him down. Pull him off, move him over, set him down. And just continue to work him to the open area of the river. And that's when I heard another boat, because like I said, my hands are full. I can't call for help. I can't bite the mic and talk at the same time. I have no hands. And I look over my right shoulder, and Heavy Rescue 14's Black Zodiac was coming up next to us. And I was like, oh, thank God. And when they rounded the corner, it was helpful because we know those guys. We trained with them. We've worked together with them. So Captain Flagler and John Eisenbray were both on that boat. And when they rounded the corner, it was like nice having guys we've trained with and we've worked with. Yeah. They came in at the end of the strainer, and it was perfect timing. We just dropped them right in the bow of their boat, and we were able to get everybody out and exit to the shore. So, I mean, it was instrumental having everybody there. It wasn't, in our case, we really appreciate all the help of everybody from the shore-based teams, whether it be Whitewater, Miami Township, Harrison, City of Cincinnati, like all these, everybody had a role to play, right? It wasn't a one-boat operation, but, it was really good seeing those guys and, obviously end up with a positive outcome.
How long do you think until that second boat showed up? How long do you think you were out there working on this?
Time.
I've never looked at the time. I'd actually be curious. It seemed like it felt like forever. It really did. Because you always look at plan A and then plan B. And I know at one point I thought we're going to watch this gentleman drown because we were really struggling for a couple minutes because, we would get swept underneath and we'd have to pull ourselves back out and then he'd get swept back underneath. And it felt like a really long time to me that we were struggling in there. It may have only been a couple minutes, but for us, it felt like a really long time, I think.
And as good as these guys did, and as phenomenal as they did, I could tell when we got them back in the boat, like you looking at them, and they were both wiped out, like a little bit of blue in the lips, and really, really working hard. So it was good.
Well, I know you've talked to a few other people because there has been a recognition for your actions during this rescue. And those of us who watched the trustee meetings got to learn a little bit about that. But there is one particular award that is international that you were recognized with. Captain Keiki, can you tell us what that award is, a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's the International Association of Fire Chiefs, Ben Franklin Award of Valor. It's very humbling to even be nominated for it because it is something from around the country and from around the world that the departments are able to nominate their members for. So it was very humbling even just to hear that we were nominated for it. It was amazing. I mean, it really was. I'd say is one of the highlights of my career for sure. Honestly, getting to spend time with these guys. I work on a different shift than them, so like Chris said, we don't get to spend a lot of time together. That's actually probably the first time that we sat down and talked about the event afterwards. So it was kind of nice just, reconnecting with these guys and talking about some of the things and seeing how they felt and then being honored like that. It's such humbling because there is some amazing rescues that go on every day in the fire service, and just to be recognized for it is very humbling and with great honor.
When you see an award like that come to the three of you for the department, what do you hope it brings back to the Colerain Township Fire Department?
I think more than anything, I think it's, it builds a tradition that, I think tradition is what drives the fire service. For hundreds of years, men and women have been risking their lives to save somebody. And, we have a risk statement. You risk a lot to save a lot. And, there's going to be a time in your career you're going to have to do that. And are you prepared for it? And I think we were prepared for that day. Like I said, we train a lot for this. We never thought it would be that detailed of a worst case scenario for us. Kind of all the worst case scenarios kind of ended up in front of us that day. And, luckily we were able to, have a positive outcome. But just that hard work does pay off and training does pay off. And, sometimes you're going to have to put it on the line and you got to be ready for that.
Is there anything about this experience you think you'll take forward into future calls that you'll get?
I would say every single part of it, because it just reinforces the family, the teamwork, the leadership, the training, and everything in our organization, our mutual aid agreements with everybody that's around us and the other agencies that do an awesome job, as we call them and they call us, and understanding the value of, like Captain Keiki would said, the tradition, so we can hopefully build the next generation to continue to carry that torch, when we're retired and gone, that there's no gap in that it just continues to happen. And, I'll just piggyback on the humbleness of it. We were down there. Motorola asked us to go throughout the conference and actually meet and talk to people and everything else. And we ran into other fire departments that were down there and chiefs that had nominated their guys for some pretty awesome rescues in fire rescues where their guys got burned or were hurt or whatever else while executing a rescue. And listening to some of those stories too, it was like, yes, it's very humbling for us, but we kind of ask ourselves too, because we know there's awesome rescues that occur around the country and around the world every day. It's kind of difficult to get an award like that, because you feel like, do we really deserve that compared to some of the other ones? Because those guys are doing awesome stuff too, and it's not like we were looking for recognition. It happened, and it was it's something I'll never forget. The bond that we had, and having Chief Walls there with us, and the Motorola reps were fantastic. And I just have to say, on a personal note, because of Motorola Solutions and what they did, Captain Keiki has his son is special needs, and and he there's a lot of things that are needed there, and Motorola knocked out of the ballpark for taking
Yes.
care of Captain Keiki and his family, and that meant the world to us. Everywhere we went was either first floor access, elevator access, or they did everything with a bus that had a lift and everything else, and they made us feel at home, and they really, and taking care of them meant a lot, and it takes care of us.
I think it's all of our jobs to pass on those traditions and, pass on what's important to our younger generations, because we've been lucky, we've had lots of good mentors in my career to kind of walk you through those steps, because those are really what drive the fire services. The brotherhood and sisterhood really does matter. Like I said, Chris alluded to my handicapped son. When he first got sick, I couldn't keep that fire department away from my house from everything they did for us. So we could never pay everybody back for that. So it just is a bigger extension of a family. So it's very nice to talk to other members and get to go down there and experience that.
Before we finish, is there anything that you want the public outside of the station, that you want the public and the residents of Colerain Township to know about the department or the rescue itself?
I think the fact that we were able to make this rescue happen, the training that we get at Colerain Township, and other departments put out a lot of good trainings. The level we're trained to, the opportunities we're afforded to learn about our job and perform better. In my eyes, it's just, there's no better place than Colerain Township. Like you were saying, Cap, some of your mentors and everything, you guys are mentors for me. There are so many good people to learn from. And just having those resources available is what made that rescue possible, for sure. Just the vast knowledge and being able to share that in a formal training setting, that's what made that rescue happen.
Yeah,
for sure.
Something important for the township to know.
And I'm very proud, and hopefully the community is very proud of the fact that, one of the things I like to share with the guys, especially almost every day at shift briefing, get sick of hearing it. I said, it's the day that your number is called is not the day to figure you're not enough. You better figure that out ahead of time. And the public doesn't pay us to watch TV and drink beverages and hang out on a couch. They don't pay us for that. They pay us to perform, and in Colerain Township, we are held to a higher standard, and the level of expectation, the level of training is, starts at the top. and that
Oh.
leadership from the top down.
A few weeks later, after this run, we got together. We always do incident after reviews, and we reviewed the incident. So we got guys together. We tried to recreate that run so we could do a better job next time. We tried to look at, hey, how could we have done this different? How could we not put somebody in harm's way? You know, what's a better way to do this? So I applaud everybody that, because a lot of places like, we made the rescue, we're good. We said that's not good enough. You know, we were in danger. How could we do this without, how could we do this better next time? And without the support of the department, we never would have had that.
And I think one of the interesting pieces of that the drill that he's talking about, one of the members that attended that drill to try to figure out if they could either recreate what we did or figure out a better way to do it, actually came to me afterwards. And he was like, hey, everybody armchair quarterbacks everything. He goes, man, I owe you an apology. He goes, because we tried to recreate what you guys did for real, and we could not execute. We couldn't make it happen. He's like, oh. And that was really, really humbling. Heavy Rescue 14, Heavy Rescue 9, those are the elite rescue companies for the city of Cincinnati. They see a lot of action. They're the guys that staff USAR, which is Urban Search and Rescue. And they're some of the highest trained in the region. And, Captain Flagler was on that boat, and he come around, and he actually sent an email on our behalf from the outsider's perspective, because we just went about, when we finished that, we cleaned everything up, we went home, we kind of laughed it off, whatever, we didn't think anything of it, and then all of a sudden an email pops up from Captain Flagler from Heavy Rescue 14, and reading that, I was taken back, because the outsider's perspective of that boat coming in, and his perspective, he sent it on to our administration, our chiefs, and the things that he said in that letter was like, the years that he's been doing it, he's never seen anything like it. And he said the quality of the rescue and competency of our crew and what we did, he's like, this is unbelievable. And they've actually reached out to us, and we've taken our rescue company and our boat down to Cincinnati and trained with them since then. And they don't open that up and really train with a lot of other agencies like that. And they're like, come on down, man, we want to train with you. They come up and they train with us now. And so it's opened up like another set of doors. And it was, I think that really started the ball rolling, was Captain Flagler stepping out there and sending an email. He didn't have to send that. He didn't have to say any of that.
Yeah.
And I think it was like, that was when I think I started to wake up, because I was upset about what happened and watching those guys, and I was afraid for them. But outside of that, it's just another run. You go about your normal life. And then I got that email, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I need to think about this a little more.
Yeah, typically we, if something like that happens, we'll get out, high five each other, hey, good job, blah, 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 and then it's back to work. And like we were saying, we were in the river a week later. How can we do this better? How can we do this safer? It's when that email was sent and we read that from somebody else's point of view, it was pretty cool.
Especially from the caliber of people, of those heavy rescue guys. That's not a small thing.
Nobody does this for recognition. They really don't. You really don't expect to be recognized. I think, when you signed up for it, I'd love this job more than anything in the world.
Best job in the world.
It really
best
is.
Job in the world.
It really is. For me, I can't imagine doing anything else. So it's amazing that I get to do the things that we get to do. And, because we get to train to that level, you always wonder if you're going to get a chance to do that. But chances are we'll probably never get to do that again. I'll probably never have that scenario again.
Yep.
But I think we'll be ready for it if we do. And hopefully we have the younger guys ready for it if they do.
I think that the whole entire rescue was very impressive. I really appreciate you coming in. I'm sure you're sick of talking about this. I know you've talked about this with Channel 12 and with Channel 5, and we're not the first ones. But I really want the township to know about this, about the details, about the decisions you made and that you're willing to do, and the training that you do for them, so that they're safe and you're ready to help them when they need it. So I really appreciate the time you spent in the studio.
Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.